The Blood Angels have returned as the poster boys for the 11th edition of Warhammer 40k. And with the brand new box here, I've been working on a scheme for the famous Sons of Sanguinius. But with a huge chunk of plastic in the Armageddon 11th edition box, as well as a Blood Angels combat patrol that I've got, I can't be spending infinite time on each model. So come with me, because in today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you a quick and easy recipe for the most famous boys in red. I'm going to be stepping away from the more traditional heavy metal style look for a little bit more of a gritty and grimier look for my Bal boys. Bal boys? But we start as always with the primer. I'm using my go-to and favourite Colourforge Matte Black. And for the striking red armour, I'm going to be using a couple of colours from the Tooth and Coat's Dark Arts set. This scheme does use the airbrush, but don't worry everyone out there who doesn't want to use one. I have done this scheme using makeup eggs as well. You can click the link above to check that out. The first colour is Blood Red Sky. This is a lovely kind of dark browny red, which is going to work great as the undercoat. I cover the whole model in this because this is going to look amazing in the shadows when I add the next colour, which is Flare Red. Now please don't call the chaplain on me for not using Mephiston Red, but I absolutely adore the look of this. It's a little bit duller, a little bit less saturated, and kind of comes out a little bit matte. I'm spraying this from a 45-degree zenithal angle so that all of those iconic Space Marine armor pieces are really highlighted, and it kind of shows where the sun would be hitting it. I'm making sure not to get the helmet here as well, because we are going to be doing that in a different color. Moving on to our next color here, we're going to be painting all of the parts of the Blood Angel that are black, so in between the armor, the chest aquila, all the weapons, all that good stuff. I'm using the Army Painter Matte Black for this step, instead of something maybe like a contrast paint, because what I find is by using a normal acrylic paint, if you do end up spilling over to that armor that we've just spent time on, it's easy to clean that away before it dries, as opposed to a contrast paint. Now I chose to make my life really difficult and put a purity seal right over the chest aquila here. If I'm being honest with you, I absolutely love purity seals on Space Marines. Just having those everywhere I can just really elevates the models. It's the little things, you know. Why don't you let me know what your favourite little thing is on Space Marines or whatever faction it is you're painting. Probably Space Marines if you're watching this, let's be honest. Super simple 3 paint step for this. Base coat it with Steel Legion Drab, go in with Xandri Dust next and leave Steel Legion just in the recesses, and then finally do a little bit of a kind of scratchy highlight with Ushabti Bone on all of the edges to really define them. But with it, I actually find that being a little bit scratchier and a little bit messier actually really suits the sort of paper vibe. Well, we've got these colours out as well. Any gold section of the armour, cover that with Steel Legion Drab. We're going to come back to this. While we're here, we may as well do the actual wax seals. Now you can go for the more traditional pinky red colour on them, but for Blood Angels, for those purity seals, I really like to do a green because it really helps them stand out. I mix moot green with black and then base coat them with this colour. And then for good measure, let's do a wash of everybody's favourite drink, Null Noil. Now once that's dried and we've had a little sip, let's go back in just with straight moot green to highlight those purity seals. Remember when I said that the helmet was a different colour? Well, the time is now and we're pulling out the world famous makeup egg for this task. One of the really cool things I find about Blood Angels is that they determine battlefield role by the actual colour of their helmet. And seeing as though this guy is an assault intercessor, he is close combat, which means he gets a snazzy yellow helmet. Now yellow sucks to paint, I'm gonna be real with you, especially over a dark undercoat, and this is coming from an Imperial Fist enjoyer. So we got to build it up. We're going to start with Blood Red Sky, which was our base coat for the whole model. We're going to mix this in with our desired yellow. I'm using the Dark Arts Pustule Ochre. That's the main kind of colour that I want to get to, but we need to build it up. If you want a more detailed explanation on how to paint a Marine with a sponge, I've already done a video where I painted up a classic 2nd edition Space Marine using this technique. You can click the link above right now to check that out, but what we're essentially doing is just loading it up, dabbing a bunch off on a paper towel or a glove if you have one of those, and then covering as much area with this first colour as you want. I'm trying to leave Blood Red Sky in the shadows while still giving us enough area on the surface to eventually work up to pure Pustule Ochre. Much like the red armour, I am trying to create a little bit of a gradient, and before you know it, we'll have this nice deep yellow colour. If you manage to hit any of the red armour as well, just quickly wipe it away with a wet paintbrush. Let's move on to the eye lenses, and I'm going to use some white ink for this. Now I don't want to go too crazy with this, so load a decent amount on your brush and paint those lenses nice and carefully. This is going to act as a great base for our colour of the eye lenses, and for a Blood Angel, of course, that is green. I've really been enjoying Warp Lightning contrast paint. It gives us a great base colour for the green eye lenses, and much like the white ink, use a nice pointy brush for this and be careful when painting in the eyes. Let's move on to painting the metallics, and I'm going to use trusty lead belcher to paint the chainsword teeth, the chainsword engine, as well as any vents and exhausts on the power pack, and of course not to forget the bolt pistol. One of my favourite golds right now is Emperor Gold by the Army Painter from the John Blanche set. And because we covered any of the gold areas with the Steel Legion drab earlier, this gives us a great foundation to build the gold up on. Because much like yellow, gold kinda sucks to paint over a black base. Now nothing too fancy, with a quick non-oil wash over the silvers and then old trusty Reichland Flesh Shade over the golds. Another cool thing that I really like about the Blood Angels, other than the fact that they're vampires, is that their companies are actually determined by a colour on their knee. This guy's going to belong to the second company, so he gets a cool blue knee. And to take a quick break, let's talk a little bit more about the Blood Angels in this episode's lore drop. While painting up this Blood Angel, I was listening to Darkness in the Blood by Guy Haley. This is the third in a trilogy of Blood Angels novels. Now this will be a spoiler-free section here because personally I really enjoyed diving a little bit deeper into the Blood Angels lore around about the time of the creation of the Cicatrix Maledictum and their introduction to the Primaris Space Marines. Now, Darkness in the Blood focuses mostly on Dante and Mephiston after their struggles during the devastation of Baal. Dante, not doing good. Mephiston, really not doing good. Now, a few of my favourite moments from this book particularly was the pressure and the split that Mephiston's ever-evolving powers had on the Blood Angels, and the implications that it had on the wider chapter. Now, the book really does portray Mephiston as this quite catastrophic power, probably nearly putting him on par with what the Blood Angels were dealing with in the devastation of Baal. Now, in the book we also get to see exactly what crossing the Rubicon Primaris is for Firstborn Marines, and believe me, it's gross. And I've really got to give it up for our man slash machine Cuvo87. He had me cracking up with all that super dry-witted Mechanicus charm throughout the whole thing. Darkness in the Blood gets a 3.5 Sanguinars out of 5. Now let's get back to the painting. Our next step is to highlight the chest aquila. If I did the shoulder trims in black, I would also be highlighting them here too, but I kept them red on this guy. I'm using Thunderhawk blue for this. Now, if I was painting black armor, I would probably use something like Dark Reaper and then Thunderhawk blue for the edge highlights. Instead of using something like grey for the highlights, I much prefer this kind of colder blue look. I think it's just a little bit more visually interesting. Now here's the secret weapon to this paint scheme. We're going to give this Blood Angel an oil wash. A mix of black and a burnt umber oil paint with some mineral spirits. As much as I do like washes, there's no denying the depth and the definition that you get with oil paints is absolutely unmatched. Once that's nice and mixed, and please use an old brush for this because it'll absolutely ruin your good ones. I'm going to start selectively dropping this into the deep recesses on the Space Marines armour. Now you can absolutely douse your model in this if you want to, but I find because of the capillary action of the oil wash, it will naturally flow into all those deep recesses, so you only really need to kind of like tap it just on those areas, and the oil wash will do all the work for you. And let me tell you, this is one of the most satisfying things in miniature painting in my opinion. Look at it go, it's just doing the work for you. If you do experience any pulling or blotchiness, don't worry because our next step is going to sort all of that out. These handy little eyeshadow applicators, hold on, check this kickflip. Oh, so close. By loading these up with a little bit of the mineral spirits and make sure that it is clean spirits, dab off a little bit of the excess. We're then going to go over the whole model and just remove some of the oil wash in areas that we don't want it to be touching. Now this is quite an important part. What I didn't do was I didn't gloss varnish this mini before doing this. What that does is not only allows a really smooth surface for the oil washes to go into the recesses, but it also will protect the paint that you've got underneath it. Guys, I just couldn't be bothered doing it in all honesty, so if you're not going to do it, just be gentle, rub really softly, and don't go too hard with these applicators. You don't need to use these eyeshadow applicators too, you can use something like a Q-tip. It's just as good. Once you're happy with the oil paints that are left, let's move back to some good old edge highlighting. I'm using Diablo Red from the Dark Heart set here. And what I'm going to be doing is very selectively place these edge highlights. I found when I just started, I was obsessively placing edge highlights on every single armor panel of a Space Marine. Although I really love the heavy metal style, I find it completely unrealistic for anybody if they are trying to get an army started. To do 3 layers of highlights on every single panel would just take so long. So what do? Just do the ones we can see. Now this is still going to be probably the most time consuming part of the mini here, and definitely having a nice sharp brush will help you. Try to take your time and try and be as neat as possible, but if you do make any mistakes, there's a little step that's coming up here that will cover all of those without you having to go redo any of your base colours. And that's some battle damage. We're going to go across the entire marine and just draw a couple of lines here and there, a couple of dots also here and there. Our guy may have been fresh after spending time with some of the tech thralls, but at this point when he's been in the battle for a little bit of time, he's going to have some scratches, he's going to have some bullet holes. And not only does this cover up some of those edge highlighting mistakes, but it also just adds a little bit of drama, adds a little bit of flair to our minis. I don't tend to go too crazy with this, 1 or 2 on each armour panel, and especially around the areas that you would probably expect there to be a lot more scuffs. But who am I to tell you, if you want to go proper grimdark with this and have it like completely stripped off to the bare ceramite, that'll also add to the narrative of your army. You know what, paint your minis however you want. I just hope this tutorial gives you a solid base for you to paint up some Blood Angels. Once you've added all the battle damage that you want to, we're going to go in with some black, and we're just going to support some of these scratches by drawing a parallel line of black right next to the ones that we have already done in our highlight colour. This will make them seem deeper, this will make them seem a little bit more damaged. It's such a quick and easy step, but honestly the elevation that this actually gives to that is just, it's amazing. While we're on the highlight train as well, let's grab some ice yellow from the army painter to highlight the helmet. Just do selected edges with this and maybe a little bit under the eyes as well to really just highlight all of these edges. Because I'm using the classic Mark 7 helmet on this guy as well, be sure to get that little snout that he's got. And of course, don't forget to do a little bit of battle damage on the helmet as well by doing exactly the same process but with ice yellow as opposed to our red highlight colour. Let's move quick through these next few highlights here. I'm going to be using Eshin Grey and Dawnstone for all the parts that are black on the mini. So you'll be looking at anything like the chain blade, we're going to be using the casing for the gun, any sort of pouches and leather straps and stuff like that that you have chosen to colour in on your Blood Angel. Any mistakes with this as well, it's really easy to cover up with just going back in with black and then just refining your edge highlights just that little bit. If you fancy it too, this is the part where we have black on our palette where we can go in and write some script on the purity seals. Just little squiggly lines, not too big, not too thick. Take your time, and a little bit does go a long way with this to really elevate the look of the model. We are nearly there, so let's grab a nice bright silver and let's highlight some of those metallics. I'm going to use this for both the silver and the gold just to make things easier. A mix of layering and edge highlights work here because it just brings back a little bit of that shine to all the metal parts. And much like the armour, we're going to add a few scratches to the chain blade, especially where the teeth are going to be, just to really simulate that ripping and tearing through Xenos. It's time to put the final touches on with some transfers. I'm going to grab the Blood Angels transfer sheet and pick out a few ones that I want to go with the rest of the squad. Classic setup here, we're going to soak them in a little bit of water and grab some micro set and micro sol. Cover the areas that the transfers are going over with the micro set, and this will help them adhere to the shape, especially over kind of funny shoulder pads and that. I like to carefully use my hobby knife to move the transfer into the area that I would like it to be. Now knees can be kind of funny, especially with this skull transfer, so what I like to do is I just make a little bit of a cut into it, and this will help it just conform to the shape of the knee a little bit easier. Once you are happy with the shapes, grab a Q-tip and then just press down on the transfer to get rid of some of that excess liquid and to help them just, again, kind of conform to the shape with which they are going over. The next step is to take some of the micro sol and then brush this over to make it look a little less like a transfer and to make it look a little bit more painted on. Now it is important to let this dry in between coats, and it may take a few for it to really start to look a little less plasticky, but this is an important step because it'll look great after it's done. Now let's get this guy over the finish line by completing the base. Now while I was building it and before I primed it, I put a little bit of texture paste on it and then also just a couple of stones and gravel to give it a little bit of textural interest. I sped up the drying process by blasting it with a hairdryer, and then we're going to grab some Agrax Earthshade Wash and just cover the entire base with this. Blast this with a hairdryer again to speed up the process, and then we're going to dry brush all of the raised areas with Ushabti Bone. To celebrate the 11th launch, I am going to be doing this in a kind of Armageddon style desert base, but also it could be Baal as well, obviously, for the Blood Angels. To help give it a bit more of a visual separation, I'm going to grab some Rakarth flesh, and I'm just going to paint this over any of the large stones. The final step for the base is to grab a couple of pigments. I'm using light dust and burnt umber pigments for here, and I'm just going to push these into the mini's feet and around it, just to really kind of set him into this environment. Because he's fighting on an absolutely blasted desert world, there's no way that his shoes aren't a little bit mucky. To take away a little bit of the shine of the transfers as well, let's add a little bit of matte varnish on them, and once that's dry, go back in with our highlight of the red armour to add a couple of cuts and scratches in them to make them look a little bit more natural. The final thing to do, of course, is to paint the rim of the base. I'm going to use some contrast paint just to make this nice and quick. I like to do black bases on my rims, but whatever you want to do, you choose the colour you want. And once we have completed that, our blood drinking, black rage resistant Son of Sanguinius is done. Personally, I found this a quick and easy scheme to get done, and it lends itself really well to batch painting, letting you get through all of that grey plastic much quicker and get on the tabletop. If you have enjoyed this video, consider dropping me a like and a subscribe, because it's a very easy way to support the channel. Another easy way is to check out my hobby affiliates in the description below, because you can save yourself money while also helping me out. But until next time, I will catch you guys on the battlefields of Armageddon.